What's going on, everyone? Welcome to episode 51 of American Advocates, here to discuss the latest updates again on what is now, what day is it, day 27 or day 26 of Iran war? I keep losing count because it's been going on for so long. Coming up on week 4 soon, and the updates are getting pretty crazy here. I was right. That's first and foremost, honestly, what I want to start off with. I was right. I said it. You couldn't ask for better timing on my prediction. I literally said my prediction last night. I said, this is shaping up to be negotiated similarly to how he negotiated the China economic tariff war last year, claiming negotiations would happen, were happening, even though the other side insisted they weren't, then claiming the negotiations were going so well that he was willing to put a pause on the tariffs on the nation because of the negotiations. In good faith. Thank you, Mr. President. Great faith. Yes, this is what he did last year. And then the other country still says, I don't know what your president's talking about. Nothing's happening here. No negotiations are taking place. We're not doing any of that. And then Trump comes out and says, well, I love China. He compliments them, even though they're literally saying this guy's crazy. No negotiations are taking place. He compliments them and literally says, oh, I love China. I love the Chinese people. You know, they're smart students. They come here and they fill up our colleges. Smart people, real smart people. And she's a great leader. President Xi Jinping, great leader. Hard to understand sometimes, but great leader. So he compliments them, and then it makes it look like he's very pleased, while a lot of the foreign administrators in the other country aren't. So it's kind of like this psychological warfare. And so because he holds the narrative of negotiations taking place, whether or not they are or aren't doesn't matter. Because they'll hold that narrative, he then he compliments the country to make it seem like he's happy with them now, even if he's not. And then, because he's holding that narrative, he then gets to buy more time to unfold his plan or to strategically plan for other outcomes, and says, since it's going so well, I've decided to extend the break on the tariffs with China. Or what we saw today, after I predicted literally last night that this would happen, he decides, you know what, I'm going to extend the ceasefire deal on Iran, who knows how to say it? I'm a white guy. I say Iran because I'm allowed to do it. I'm white. I say taco. I say Iran. I say whatever. I say it however I want. Potato. So he extends it by 10 days now. 10 extra days of ceasefire promises and guarantees, reassurances from the United States, at least on their energy facilities. He's not fully promising a full ceasefire. This seems to be more of a partial ceasefire, although it does seem like the U.S. has pretty much stopped striking Iran for the most part. I was looking at the latest news that occurred last night when I woke up this morning, and Israel and Iran were going to war with each other last night. We're talking several devastating strikes in central Israel, as well as several devastating strikes in Iran as well. So they've been going to war, but I really wasn't reading too much. I wasn't able to find too much out there on the U.S. striking Iran. So it seems like we have actually kind of paused our military operation to some degree. And of course, there's a timing element here that I've been discussing on this channel as well when it comes to all of this, and how, Trump is operating within certain constraints of both the market and the military. So that plays a factor as well, which is how I was so eloquently able to analyze the situation and literally deliver you guys. I'm like almost a prophet. Like, I might actually be the next Alex Jones. So like I said, predicting that last night and having it come true, very gratifying. I literally said, don't be surprised if Trump extends the ceasefire deal and claims negotiations are going so well that Iran deserves an extension on the deal to continue peace talks with us. All while they continue to post, Iran posted stuff not even 24 hours ago, this wartime propaganda about how their ground troops were going to beat ours, and how they've been prepping for this for the longest time, and how they're ready for a ground invasion. So it's the fog of war. Trump, I give him credit. I actually still don't, I'm not entirely convinced of any negotiations taking place whatsoever, but I do certainly admire the strategy. It is psychological warfare, and it's fair, and it should actually be played this way. Objectively speaking, I still despise this war. I still think this is a complete betrayal of MAGA on Trump's part. I didn't vote for this. Boots on the ground seems even more inevitable now than ever before. We'll get into that in a second. And so I am still wholly unsatisfied and completely enraged at this all. But objectively, I will say, from what I've been seeing when it comes to military plans centered around Karg Island or Qasem Island or the latest island I was reading about today, or possible military plans, objectively I can say, okay, there are still some smart strategists in this administration that are at least planning for success in some regard, and I can at least respect that. It doesn't provide me any form of assurance, by the way, and I'm not here to provide that to you, and it doesn't make me feel any happier about the war. This is a complete nonsensical waste of time, money, and blood on America's part. But objectively speaking, I've seen a few things that it's like, okay, I can give them props for that. This is one of them. Trump's strategy here, although it is becoming, I think it's going to start becoming more see-through because he might have a tendency to over-rely on it now. You can only use the same tactics for so long before they become predictable. So it's like if a YouTube streamer such as myself last night was able to predict an extension on a ceasefire deal, and within 24 hours I'm proven completely right, that might actually be troubling then, in all honesty. So that's something to actually reevaluate on second thought. But I can at least respect some of the strategy going on here. So we're going to get into this extension on the ceasefire deal by 10 days now. I'm going to cover that here. How the timing plays a part. Newest reports and updates on our military presence there. A lot has already developed. There's actually breaking news coming out of out of sources from within the Pentagon and administration, reporting on information to the Wall Street Journal, who's reporting it back to us. So not completely credible, but so far it hasn't really been a miss. A lot of it's been a hit, what they've been reporting. So we had some breaking news come out less than an hour ago in regards to our military. There's a massive update. Going to be covering that as well. Talking about Karg Island, Qasem Island, one of the other islands I haven't discussed too much. And then I'll also be discussing Israel and Mossad and the statements they've made recently, as well as Iran updating their latest threats, which also occurred not too long ago as well. So that's what's in store for this entire live stream. Be sure to like the stream right now. Give it a like by double tapping your phone screen or hitting the thumbs up button. It truly helps the stream perform well in the algorithm. And subscribe to American Advocates for more content like this. Before I get started, I'll just take a look if there's any chats. Host was right. One of 4 predictions, but nonetheless, all of my predictions have been correct. Which ones have been wrong? Which ones have been wrong? 1 out of 14. All my predictions have been right, and if they haven't been fully right yet, they will be. You'll realize it. Glenn, can the host predict sports? No, I don't watch sports. That's for the goy. Sup, nerds? Hey, Dial Up. What's up, man? Am I on time? I don't have notifications on. Oh, man, you got to turn those notifications on, man. I literally say that every time. What the fuck have you been doing this entire time, Dial Up? You got to have those notifications on, man. You are on time for the most part, though, Dial Up, yes. Glenn, you think you take callers? Eddie, I actually want to get this show, yes, at some point, maybe this year, when I'm in a bit of a moving situation soon here. Well, actually, I mean, we all know I'm homeless and I'm a diaspora and I live in my car. Obviously, I'm a nomad wanderer, nomad vagabond. Call me what you will, you know. But in all honesty, yeah, once I get my moving situation completed here and some better internet, I do actually want to get some phone lines set up, courtesy of actually Google. Google has an app for that. It's like a $10 a month plan. I could take callers. That would be pretty dope. I might want to do that actually. So. We'll see, but that would be cool. 2009 Lifeguard has actually also made a similar request. He calls me, 2009 Lifeguard calls me Millennial Rush Limbaugh, which I know he means well, so I'm not offended by that at all. And Rush Limbaugh was a part of my childhood, so it's nostalgic at the very least. You know, I wouldn't say Little Caesars Pizza is great pizza, but I still like to eat there because it's nostalgic. I feel the same about Rush Limbaugh, so I actually do take it as a compliment. And it's the same vibe with Lifeguard. He said, oh, man, you should do some call-in shows when you get a chance. And, yeah, I'll definitely probably wind up doing that. He should get Stephen AI on the phone. Why? So it can sound like a robot? He can just read his news articles like a robot. According to the Wall Street Journal today, President Donald Trump and his administration are considering new avenues in the Middle East. That would be one entertaining phone call from Stephen AI. I don't even think that guy's going to continue coming here anymore. I think he's fed up with being referred to as AI. Is he wearing a do-rag? I am. Yeah, yes, you caught me. I'm wearing, well, this is called a white boy do-rag. You know, when it's raining out like today, the humidity, it just messes with my hair. I meant 1 out of 14 because last stream you said you'll make a ton of predictions, so one will be right. Yeah, but in this case, like, you don't understand. It is a shotgun effect, but it's turning out that all 14 predictions are going to be right. So it's like, give me full props. Honestly, I expect to see people literally saying in chat, you were right about everything. That's what I expect. I'm a diaspora. That's correct. All right, let's get into it. So let's go over what's actually happening here. And again, be sure to like the stream right fucking now. Otherwise, everything stops. That's always going to be the threat going forward here. These streams need to be liked. I need the likes. They're free. They cost you nothing. You should like the stream always. And if it gets to a point where I'm not satisfied with the number of likes, I'll literally just sit here and do nothing. And that will be your punishment. Because then you'll be just stuck watching somebody doing or saying nothing. And there's nowhere else for you to go. There's nowhere else that's as entertaining as this. There's no other stream on YouTube that's as accurate as this. There's nobody smarter than me. So it's like, I know for a fact you guys can't go anywhere else. And therefore, I hold you at ransom when it comes to liking the stream. That's how this will work going forward. Understood? Hey, Bold as a Lion, what's up? He says, liked. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Okay, so yes, I was right. Trump extends the ceasefire by 10 days, right? And it's a ceasefire for energy-only targets. So it's not a full ceasefire. It's like a partial ceasefire. Everything about this Trump administration seems to be partial. We're still, believe it or not, in a partial shutdown for the government now that's gone on for over 40 days, right? That was partial. A lot of partial deliveries on campaign promises we've seen, right? It's like, partial this, partial on the tariffs. We're going to tariff China 140%. Actually, only 80%. Actually, only 15%, right? So partial on the tariffs, it seems, right? Then it's like partial on the Epstein files. Well, you guys can have half of them, but the other half are just so bad and just would incriminate entire countries that we can't release those. So partial on the Epstein files release. Partial on the JFK files. We got some additional stuff, but not everything. So everything with Trump is partial. It's all partial. Even this ceasefire deal, partial. Partial meaning we won't strike energy stuff, which truthfully, if I'm not mistaken, I could have, it's been a long time since I've looked at international law and war crimes, but I thought striking energy stuff was a war crime. So it's like, what are we even doing here? I could be wrong on that though. I don't, it's been a long time. I should have brushed up on that before I went live, but I always thought that was a war crime. It's like, you're just like, striking energy stuff affects the civilians. It's supposed to be military targets to the best of your knowledge. At least I thought. I might be completely wrong on that though. Anyways, so partial ceasefire extended. I was completely correct. I can't say that enough. You're probably going to hear me say that probably a dozen more times tonight because I'm right all the time, but when I'm really right, I want to make sure everyone knows how right I am. It literally doesn't get more right than me or smarter than me. Anyways, the timing on here is another factor. Just like how I said this 5-day ceasefire deal that was originally kicked off on Monday, and I said, look at the timing, look at the constraints of the war on both sides. Observe the energy stalemate here going on. This is a war of both attrition now and of energy. But on the energy side, it really is still a stalemate because Iran is willing to go scorched earth, which is not something apparently the Pentagon and Pete Hegseth and Trump accounted for. I think they're caught off guard by Iran's aggressiveness when it came to striking their neighbors, which they weren't friends with, but also weren't dire enemies with to the point of almost coming to blows. And so much so now to where the United Arab Emirates and what's the other country, have vowed now to get involved in this war if their energy targets get struck. So I don't think that they were expecting that. And because of that scorched earth policy, it forces President Trump and this administration to deal with Iran a little bit more conservatively than I think they initially thought they'd have to, right? And I've said this a couple times now. Trump no doubt went into Iran under the false notion that this could be wrapped up quickly like Venezuela. rather than kidnapping the leader, which is actually even harder. This was supposed to be probably easier in Trump's mind. I have no doubt he was told, this will be like Venezuela on steroids, Mr. President. Instead of having to actually hit the ground from helicopters with troops and put lives at risk and kidnap an entire world leader and his wife and bring them all the way back to New York for prison and for court and, everything else, we can just bomb the fuck out of them. We can just kill the Iranian regime. And by the way, that we did. I mean, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The original Iranian regime is mostly dead. We took out 49 of them in 36 hours or something like that. So we did do that. But this was so poorly planned overall that Trump thought that would end it. And he assumed, I think, wrongfully so, that it would cause another revolution to occur from the ground up in Iran, seeing the one that took place just a few weeks prior to these strikes, where ultimately, by the way, 30,000 of them were punished via executions by the IRGC. I think he thought, and it makes it very obvious that he thought this when he tweeted out, "We have struck down the leaders of the IRGC. Iranians, now is your time to rise up and take to the streets and take control of your country." That didn't happen. And so we didn't get the civil war, basically, courtesy of the Iranians. We didn't get a Iranian Revolution 3.0, technically, is what it would be, I guess, historically. 2.0, if you're counting only the most recent one. And so we didn't get that. And on top of it, they didn't account for what I call the zealous attitude of the Iranians. They're zealots, right? They're religious zealots. They're hardcore Muslims. They have something that they believe is a higher cause worth fighting and dying for. And so none of it accounted for. And so ultimately, yes, we killed a bunch of them, but many more have now risen up to take their place. This is how the Iranian regime works. So none of this was accounted for. And as a result of that, they've had to play more conservatively with Iran. And that's why this 5-day ceasefire was originally announced. And it was basically, in my view, was to buy time, because the timing was undeniable, of course. Those 2,200 Marines that were originally deployed to the Middle East are arriving tomorrow. And the 5-day ceasefire, coincidentally, was going to end tomorrow night. Marines are there. Ceasefire deal ends that night. Marines can go in on Saturday, our Saturday. They're at a different time than us, obviously, but nonetheless. So that's how I originally viewed it. And now, as I accurately and so rightly predicted last night, just literally spot on, just like I am literally a prophet, Trump extends the ceasefire deal and insists negotiations are going well. In his words, they sent us it was just a magnificent present. I'm not going to say specifically what it was, but it was in the form of, like, what they're known for, oil and gasoline. I mean, they love us pretty much. They're begging for peace. So we're going to extend the peace deal for 10 more days, effective, I think, until April 6th is what that will be. And now it's extended, right? And now, the 2,200 Marines are still arriving. We have the 82nd Airborne Division that's also set to arrive. They can be anywhere in the world in 18 hours is kind of their thing. And they have the staying power to hold out for months, sometimes over a year if needed. And we have anywhere between 1,000 to 3,000 of them being sent as well, and probably arriving as tomorrow or Saturday as well. So we have instantly this force of close to anywhere between close to 4,000 or maybe even 6,000 soldiers arriving there in the next day and a half or so, right? So that's there. Then you have to take a look at and examine, why is that happening? Why are they going there? That's another thing, right? And so that's kind of the whole factor here. And I originally even started hinting at this idea yesterday. I said, everyone's talking now about Karg Island, and they're saying, well, we're going to take Karg Island. We're going to take it. We bombed it deliberately the way that we did so that we can take it, rebuild military infrastructure that we bombed from the Iranians. We can rebuild that. The Marines are being sent with the tools and welding, etc., to rebuild the military bases and then use as a launch point into Iran if needed. The 82nd Airborne, for instance, can launch off Karg. So that's the hypothesis. But I started hinting at this idea yesterday. I said, people are focused on the whereabouts of Karg Island in proximity to the Strait of Hormuz. It's 300 miles northwest of the Strait of Hormuz. So it's far enough away from the strait to not be in like super ridiculous range, but at the same time, it's right there. It's in the Persian Gulf, which is key territory that we're not really doing a good job of controlling. So we can, in sort of a way, have an island and military bases set up that's close enough to the strait where we can try to start developing some form of control in the entire region. Not to mention, we deliberately left the energy facilities on the island intact, and controlling Karg Island would mean instantly knocking out Iran 90% of Iran's oil exports, which goes through Karg Island. This, of course, in turn would actually hurt the China. It would hurt China quite a bit as well, which is always a plus. So that's how everyone's viewing it. But last night I hinted at this and I said, everyone's focusing on its proximity to the Strait of Hormuz and what the island could be. No one's factoring in a very simple reality. Karg Island, though it's 300 miles away from the strait, is only 15 miles away from offshore of Iran's mainland. 15 miles, that's nothing in military terms, which means that the island would be subject to literally almost every form of attack imaginable. And there's already rumored reports, intel reports coming in that the Iranians are fortifying the island with mines to prevent any, what are they called, amphibious vehicles from being able to go up onto the land, right? Breach the island. So there's possibly a perimeter of mines now being set up around Karg Island, as well as the fact that I mentioned this before. Historically, Iran has been the #1 country most stereotypically associated with IEDs and roadside bombs. So no doubt, and this is called anti-personnel equipment. And intel has come in suggesting that the island will now be laced with anti-personnel equipment. This could include IEDs, claymores, tripwires in doorways, entire buildings rigged to explode, central command detonation, meaning some fucker on the mainland of Iran can just be spying on the island, and once they notice troop presence, just detonate some sort of bomb. Could be planted anywhere. And there's more. The island also would be easily shelled by any sort of artillery in the mountains of Iran on the coast outside of Karg Island. Short-range ballistic missiles, which we know Iran seems to have in plenty, no matter what this administration says. They can, every night Trump says they're running low, their stockpiles are low, and then I go to bed and I wake up the next morning and I find out Israel's been hit 18 times or something. It's like, are they running low though? Are they? So short-range ballistic missiles could easily hit Karg Island, as well as their own artillery. They have just a bunch of different methods where they could still strike Karg Island, which means that any form of infantry unit that breaches the island would immediately be at a risk of like 18 different hazards, which means high casualties, and that's political poison. The midterms are here. That's political poison. Anything boots on the ground is political poison, and what would be most political poison is to turn this into another Vietnam, where our troops go over there and there's just disgusting booby traps everywhere. They're dying, they're getting wounded, they're coming back with their legs blown off. Like, that is not the image this administration wants this year, right? But Karg Island is important. It actually would be a strategical advantage for us to control it in some way, shape, or form. So this 10-day ceasefire plan now, well, does this buy Trump more time, coincidentally, like the 5-day ceasefire plan this week bought him when it comes to 2,200 Marines arriving smack dab at the perfect timing end of the ceasefire deal? It turns out, yeah, it probably does. So I already announced this news earlier on the channel when I reported that an additional 2,500 Marines had also left for the Middle East. They were leaving from California, and they left after the 2,200 Marines that are arriving tomorrow left. So they'll be arriving much later, right? Well, a 10-day ceasefire plan lasting until April 6th. I think I saw April 6th. My math's terrible on the days. Well, that buys us the time in order to be able to wait for the additional 2,500 Marines to get there. And so the timing does seem to once again possibly line up to where Trump is stalling for a greater military presence in order to be able to pull off some sort of ground invasion. I still think boots on the ground is imminent. Now, when it comes to Karg Island, though, that's where I've started raising questions yesterday, and I'm going to raise a lot more today for all of the reasons that I just mentioned, all the aforementioned reasons. It could be a death trap, and that's political poison. So I'm going to break that down in a second here. We're going to get into Karg Island. I'm going to discuss another island that could be actually two more islands that could be on the Pentagon's radar as far as making sense of it all. And then I'm going to go into some breaking news coming out just about an hour ago when I went live here, centered around the Pentagon, weighing more options when it comes to boots on the ground. So I'll take a look at chats, though. I don't want to miss what you guys are saying. Also, you guys got to get these likes up. I am going to stop and I will sit here and say nothing until I see a better viewer to like ratio. That is so important. My streams, because of my pro-Christ, pro-American nationalism, somewhat mostly anti-Israel rhetoric lately. The YouTube algo, they don't like my channel as much anymore. So the likes are crucial. The likes help promote the stream in the algorithm, as do the chats. But I got to get those likes, or you guys got to just fuck right the hell off. Like, I honestly, if you're not going to like the stream, I'll hear in silence until my view count goes down to a more acceptable rate with the likes. I'd rather lose viewers who are not here to do anything beneficial to the channel. You can be goy, you can be cattle, you can even be swine, but you cannot be useless, all right? You're going to get slaughtered one way or another. You may as well accept your fate and like the fucking stream. Like it right now! Yeah, I always feel like it's got to be at least like, 33% likes to views is like the bare minimum. Maybe even half. I might even start getting snobby like that and just demanding like, see, like right now, 16 views to 8 likes, acceptable. Okay, I'll take a look at some chats. Now that we've trimmed some fat. We had like 24 viewers, and it's like, no. 24 viewers, 6 likes, nope. Some of those viewers got to go. Get them out of here. All right. Hey, Traveling Lamp's back. He's the one that exposed Stephen Heffer as a CIA agent. Who's Marshall? What kind of... That's a crazy name, Marshall. Marshall Minor. But put Barron in... You meant to say put Barron in the war. Yeah, that was trending. Marshall says, hey, Marshall. Hello. Welcome to the stream. All right, there's a lot of stupid chats in here. I don't see anything useful, so I'm gonna continue on. Okay, so when it comes to Karg Island and the doubts that I have here, we're hearing the reports of these Marines coming in and all the timing and all of this. When it comes to Karg Island, all of those aforementioned reasons I talked about a minute ago are starting to raise doubts, in my opinion. I don't know how everyone else feels about this. I need to check out some other political talking heads. Most of them, in all honesty, to be frank with you, I get very excited about military strategy. You can tell most of these channels don't. Most of these channels are like cheerleaders. They're like, oh, Trump's going to get them. Oh my God, we're going to control Karg Island. We're going to take the Strait of Hormuz. All of Iran's oil is going to be ours. We're just killing the regime by every single day. Like, Trump's just killing all the right people. We're going to liberate the Persians. This is hurting China. This is just wonderful. It's so pathetic. It's gay. It's literally actually gay. It's like some of them are actually, so it's like, it's just outrageous, right? I find myself being one of the only channels trying to break this down from an actual strategic standpoint. And besides that, the only actual critical thinker is like disgusting out there that I've found. And his name's Ben Shapiro. And I'm actually going to cover him in a second because he said some interesting things today as well. But he's not like breaking it down correctly. He's doing it all from like, oh, this helps Israel. So, so we're going to cover that in a second too. But I don't see too many of them like really talking about this. And the bottom line is, it's actually probably not wise to take Karg Island for all of the reasons I mentioned. Yeah, the eyebrow implant guy, exactly, Traveling Lamp. It's actually crazy. Like, people joke about Ben Shapiro's hat getting bigger every time they see him, whatever they call that stupid hat. Like, people have joked about that, and it's like, I've actually never even found that joke all that funny. But then the eyebrows changed. And then I'm like, what's going on? Like, that's actually funny because that's not like just a joke. That actually happened. His eyebrows have gotten thicker. I don't understand that. And it doesn't matter anyway, but yeah. So might not be Karg Island. This is my whole point. Let me get focused. Let me get dialed in here. It might not wind up being Karg Island that we take, actually. We might just be using that as a bluff, right? Iran has clearly, according to our intel, spent a lot of time and resources fortifying that island in anticipation for a U.S. invasion there. And strictly, objectively, strategically speaking, it makes sense in a way for us to control that island, like I said, due to the fact that 90% of Iran's oil exports come and go through that island. But like I've also stated, again, just geographically speaking, it makes no sense. It's way too close to the Iranian mainland, which is laced with mountains, right? So Karg Island might just be a bluff. It might just be a distraction, and I hope it is, by the way. I hope it is. I see this unfolding in multiple different possible outcomes. But one of the possible outcomes is just it's a diversion tactic. Oh, Karg Island, oh. So the Iranians go, we can't lose that. We need to fortify it. We're going to booby trap it. But the whole thing here is, what are we most upset, or what do we most claim to be upset about when it comes to Iran? What's the at least gaslit excuse we've been fed as Americans for going into this war? Ultimately, where it started last summer under Operation Midnight Hammer was their nuclear facilities and their enrichment of uranium. Now, the problem is, of course, those facilities are mainland Iran, and they're oftentimes buried deep in the mountains. But when you're talking 82nd Airborne Division, literal paratroopers, when you're hearing rumors about the Navy SEALs now possibly getting involved, and then you're seeing the Marines in number being routed to the Middle East more and more, even with the breaking news I'll get into in a second, then you have to ask yourself, is the island a diversion? Well, the real operation might actually be, and I've heard rumors of this now, might actually be to send the troops into the nuclear facilities, which have been destroyed twice now, apparently, to steal the enriched uranium. This is some of the latest reporting coming in from some inside sources, and they're saying that the actual plan here, and what had, like I discussed, Congresswoman Nancy Mace the other day, how upset she was about how the American people are just not being told the truth when it comes to the objectives for this war and what's actually being planned. Well, because their facilities, we're talking Isfahan, Natanz is one of the ones actually being focused on, I believe, and Fordo, they're mainland Iran. This would mean that it would have to be a ground invasion, and that's political poison. So instead, the copium, and I've discussed this as well with MAGA, they're willing to shift those goalposts in order to continue to praise their Lord and Savior Donald Trump, a man who I voted for, by the way, but have no problem criticizing, unlike most of the cultists. And the fact of the matter is, the goalpost can be easily more shift to, well, it's just an island invasion, or it's just a special operation, limited time. And so this could be the method of delivery of, well, actually, the thing is, it's too dangerous for them to take the island. So actually, in truth, the internal ground war invasion is actually safer. And it does fulfill the actual goal here in the Middle East, in Iran, to take away their enrichment of uranium capabilities, their nuclear capabilities. This is what the war was all about, right? It wasn't about regime change, even though they literally say it was about regime change. It wasn't about Persian liberation, even though they literally say it was about liberation for the Iranian people. It was always about nuclear power and nuclear warheads. Now we have to go in and steal that. These are the reports coming in now, and that almost could make sense to me. So keep your eyes out for that. Navy SEALs are rumored to be getting involved. Like I said, 82nd Airborne Division can parachute in. And they've already been testing stuff in accordance to what I heard Secretary of War Pete Hegseth say today. They're now flying A-10 Warthogs, and what are the choppers called? I can't remember, the Blackhawks. Blackhawks and A-10 Warthogs. Low-flying military aircraft, according to Hegseth, are now flying over Iran, which means that their anti-air capabilities have been pretty much knocked out, right? So it is at least presumably somewhat safe to send paratroopers in, or at least give that a go. And that's what the airborne divisions are for in some way, shape, or form. So we'll see what happens here. But I am starting to believe that Karg Island is actually going to be either a mission that was never intended to be followed through, or a mission that will be canceled in favor of just going mainland Iran to steal their enriched uranium. That seems to be the more likely possible outcome, because, again, if you take Karg Island, you have to hold it. That would be the point of taking Karg. You don't just storm Karg Island, which very likely wouldn't even have any Iranian regime infidels on the island. They wouldn't be there. They're lacing the island with booby traps just to kill as many Marines as possible in the event of an invasion. It's all just a scorched earth policy. And on top of that, like I said yesterday, it would be a mistake repeated at this point, for the Pentagon to assume that the Iranians won't go scorched earth, and despite the island's importance to Iran, just deciding that, if the Americans are going to control it, that's unacceptable. We'll just go scorch earth and destroy the entire island, launching every form of heavy missile, ballistic missile, artillery on the island. Drone strikes were another possible outcome, by the way. The Iranians have been using their drones the most effectively against the United States. Something that our military has actually been lagging behind on is military drone development. So that's actually kind of the issue here. Holding the island would be the only way taking the island makes sense, and holding the island would come at just perpetually more and more casualties, in all honesty, if Iran was serious about fighting us. And they've made serious statements about how they're ready for a ground war invasion. So the island almost doesn't even make sense when you really think about it in the stance that it's 15 miles away from Iran. So that's what I wanted to say in regards to Karg Island. Now, some of the breaking news that came in, and this is where you can say it can almost flip you back to thinking we might actually try to take Karg Island, but also it could work in the other direction with what I'm saying here when it comes to storming the old nuclear facilities of Iran that have been destroyed twice, but somehow might still be active. Storming those and stealing the enriched uranium. It can go either way, and I'm doing that on purpose so that either way, and Glenn knows this by now, either way, at some point I will come on here and say I was right. So, and then, none of it happens and I'm just completely wrong, I guess. I actually hope I'm wrong, by the way, because boots on the ground is political poison and I voted against it. So if none of this happens, I'm actually the happiest out of everybody. I don't want this to happen. This is just what I'm analyzing and predicting will happen as a result. So breaking news coming in today, as of about 1 hour ago, from inside sources close to the Trump administration and the Pentagon, this information being delivered to the Wall Street Journal. And it's essentially the Pentagon is now weighing the option of sending an additional 10,000 more troops to the Middle East to join the already 2,200 Marines that are arriving tomorrow, the already 1,000 to 3,000 82nd Airborne Infantrymen who are going to be deploying there likely tomorrow, and to join the additional 2,500 Marines that will be arriving there in somewhere around the second week of April, most likely, possibly by April 6th when this 10-day ceasefire deal now will end. So that's now, where are we at with all of that? Well, that's 4,700 Marines plus anywhere between 1,000 and 3,000 82nd Airborne Division men, meaning close to 8,000 soldiers, plus an additional 10,000. We're now seeing a massive amount of soldiers very likely being sent to the Middle East. 18,000 total soldiers. And this is breaking news as of 1 hour ago. Unconfirmed reports, mind you, but the bottom line is those the original reporting on 5,000 Marines being sent to the Middle East, Mago at the time was also saying, well, that's just a lie, okay? I mean, that's fake news, obviously, and these are just panicans. And it's like, well, it turns out 4,700 of them are going there. So the reports were actually right, and they were considered leaked reports and unconfirmed reports then too. So I'm actually not prepared to discredit Wall Street Journal anymore, and I think the sad reality of this Trump administration is, at this point, the liberal media is seemingly more reliable right now because it used to be the liberal media had to lie about Trump to make him look bad. That was all last year we dealt with. Well, the first 5 months of his administration, we dealt with that. We dealt with the fake news actively engaged in media warfare against Trump and trying to make him look bad. And it was a psyop by the media. And everyone could see, most people with a brain could see through that. And it was disgusting. And I devoted my channel to disproving the fake liberal media news, by the way, back then. This channel started just over a year ago now. And I used to debunk the liberal left media news. But the bottom line is, the sad reality is, since Trump has just broken most of his key core campaign promises, what he's doing is so unpopular, the liberal media no longer needs to lie about Trump. They can just report the truth. And that's kind of what they've been doing, at least when it comes to this war. Now, there's, of course, extra fear-mongering and liberal narrative in there. You just disregard that. You'll find conservative narrative on the conservative articles, too. You disregard that. You disregard the rhetoric and you disregard the propaganda in favor of the facts or in favor of the reporting. And in this case, 10,000 additional soldiers being sent to the Middle East. Unfortunately, I can't sit here and say that seems highly unlikely. I mean, I think Trump has enough common sense to only send 4,700 Marines and possibly 3,000 82nd Airborne Division guys. Don't you think that's enough? I think Mr. Trump's a smart man, and he knows sending any more would actually just hurt his chances, the GOP's chances in midterms. So that just seems like fake news. And, it's only going to be the panicans that believe that. Fuck you. Like, anybody saying that, fuck you. Right? I mean, honestly. So now, with 10,000 additional soldiers being sent there, you have to then ask the question, a force now of 18,000 collective military men in the Middle East, centered around Iran, what can you do with those numbers? Well, now the possibilities seem somewhat endless. At least that's a good start. We could wind up sending ultimately more than that if the war got bad, right? But that's a good start. So now Not to undo everything I just talked about with Karg Island, but now it's like, well, you have to ask yourself, what number is too high of a number when it comes to casualties for this Trump administration? What are they prepared to sacrifice for Israel and for Middle East and for this Middle East war and for regime change? What are they willing to give up when it comes to young Christian white men here in America? Ultimately, that's the majority of our military, right? And if the answer is darker than we want to hope that it is, well, that means that storming Karg Island could still be a possibility. Some get blown up by mines, others by IEDs. Some hit tripwires and doorways. Claymores claim the lives of others. Artillery strikes come in. Ballistic missiles come in. And multiple, hundreds, if not thousands of casualties are likely to occur at that point. It's not a large island. But they set up shop. They rebuild the military bases there. They try to maintain the energy infrastructure, and they use the island as a launch point for future operations into mainland Iran because it has an airstrip on it. And if they're willing to just sacrifice hundreds or thousands of soldiers' lives, then Karg Island with 18,000 soldiers is still in the realm of possibility, obviously. And I hope it doesn't go that way. But at the same time, 10,000 additional soldiers, if this story winds up being confirmed as true, which very likely it will or won't be by tomorrow at this point, all the truth is coming out quickly, mainly because this administration is not all that good at lying, by the way. You know, when it came to the stealing the enriched uranium, this was how Trump handled that question today. It was in his little cabinet meeting. He said, well, let's just say that is what I was planning. If it was, why would I tell you that? Why would I say yes to that? I can't believe you'd even ask that question while we're at war. Well, this is not a war, actually, but while we're in a conflict in the Middle East, I can't believe you'd ask that. It's like, it's like national security. And you're a nice person, actually. I mean, you seem pleasant, but I just don't understand why you ask these questions. It's like he's so bad at lying at this point. So, and like everything he says changes. It flip-flops, sometimes in the same speech. So 10,000 soldiers, regardless. Let's say the best case scenario is they still are smart and they're like, we don't want to sacrifice lives unnecessarily for Karg Island, so we're not prepared to shed blood for Karg Island. Okay, good. Why are 10,000 more soldiers being sent to the Middle East is now the question, right? That's now the next logical question there. Why are we going to have a force of 18,000 soldiers there if we were assured that no boots on the ground would happen, that no ground war invasion would take place, no ground war assaults would happen, right? They know this is political poison. They all know this. And they tried to assure us and gaslight us into this, which, by the way, if you watch this channel, you never fell for that shit. I've been telling you all along. I created a video now almost 3 weeks old, and I said, boots on the ground are imminent. God, I'm so fucking smart and sexy. It's honestly unreal. Like, my audience size should be like 10 times the size. And the reason why it's not is because not enough of you fucking goy fuckers like the stream. 10 likes for 25 viewers is unacceptable. It's honestly crazy. Likes are free. Hit the like, you cheap asses. And stop spamming the trans flag in my chat. What the hell is that? Where is Glenn? Where's Glenn? Where's my moderator? He fell asleep already. Oh, there. Now that stops the spam from this little guy with his rainbow flags. Holy ego, my guy. Shut up. There's only one flag that flies in this chat. Bitch. Yeah, Glenn probably fell asleep, but I'll tell you what, I'm going to deal with this. Get rid of this guy. We don't fly those flags in this chat, and we certainly don't tolerate that level of spam when it comes to those flags either. That's not a nation's flag whatsoever. Glenn has been hacked, says Life. Hey, welcome, Lifeguard. Yeah, Glenn has been hacked. APAC got to Glenn. Yeah, he's being bought off now by people who spam the chat with rainbow flags. Like, it's unacceptable. I have to do my own moderation work in my 20 viewer live stream. Unreal. I am literally above this at this point. And then that guy's like buying into what I'm saying seriously. Wow, you have quite the ego, huh? What an idiot. 1 million troops in Iran, says David. Let us never see that day, please, for the love of God. Oh, no, they took out Glenn from the book deposit. Yeah. Glenn's been, listen, guys, I'm going to let you in on a secret. He's asleep probably right now, but this tends to happen when he has a weakness for women. Glenn. I've tried to explain to him in private messages. I'm like, Glenn, you can't let these hoes get to you, man. It's supposed to be bros before hoes. And Glenn's always like, he's like, I know, man. I know. He's like, I do you so dirty. I do you wrong all the time, but he's like, I just can't help myself. So Glenn's probably like snuggled up with some honey right now. He's an older millennial guy, so he still falls for that way of life. You know what I mean? Like the rest of us, we're waiting on the Elon Musk sex robots that you can like plug into the wall to heat up to replicate body heat. Glenn still falls for like actual organic women, you know. Then he complains about the headache that they cause him, but nonetheless, it is what it is. That's probably what's happening to him. I'll have to wind up probably appointing a second moderator in chat soon. We have some good moderator candidates in chat, I think, that are worthy of the title. So I'll look into that. We'll see what winds up happening. I'm not upset with Glenn. I'm just disappointed. He'll watch this back. He always watches it back tomorrow. He'll watch this back and he'll have something to say about it in the first 10 minutes of my live stream before he falls asleep again. Anyways, let me get back on track here. Yeah, so no matter how you want to look at it, boots on the ground just continually looks more inevitable. And what you have is the MAGA cheerleader channel chats talking about, well, the Iranian regime is desperate and they're fracturing and some of them want peace now and that's causing it's going to lead to a massive civil war in the entire country. I think that's copium. I don't get that feeling when I'm reading the news. I don't see evidence of that. It seems like they're still pretty united. Certainly they're united enough to be attacking Israel. They successfully launched missiles into central Israel last night, injuring multiple Israelis. And so it's like they seem to be pretty unified still. It is copium. So yeah, I mean, I could be wrong. It's so hard. Listen, the bottom line is anybody giving you 100% guarantees on their predictions right now is full of shit. I so correctly predicted that Trump would extend the ceasefire deal yesterday because all you have to do is look at the timeline of the China tariff war from last year. Trump negotiates and operates his diplomacy in the same kind of way, where it's all of these threats followed by swift and decisive overreactions, followed by dialing it back, followed by claiming peace talks which are or aren't happening, can't really prove it one way or another, followed by the other country going, what the fuck, that's not actually happening right now, followed by Trump laughing and basically saying, no, they're just a little upset, but it is happening and they're actually going so well, we're going to extend the peace talks here. We're going to extend that time, and I'll continue to pause the military action, the tariffs for now. And then it ultimately results in making some sort of a deal, right? That's like the end result. So what that deal will be in Iran now, this is a different war. It's not an economic war. So you can follow the China tariff war for quite a while, but then at some point you have to understand there is a difference. A tariff economy war is much different than a actual bloody militaristic war. So at some point the tactics hopefully are going to be a little bit different. But the negotiations, they could result in Iran getting something more. And I, at this point, I actually almost don't see how this concludes without Iran getting something, because I don't think we can fully defeat Iran in the constrained time limit that Trump has to operate under because of midterm pressure. So like that's the actual midterm pressure is like the actual issue here. We'd all like to sit here and think it's a populist issue and that Trump's probably thinking to himself, oh my God, my whole voter base hates me now, but he doesn't care. And he's being fed bullshit polls. 100% support from MAGA, according to CNN. My boy, Harry Enton, I love that guy. For the longest time, I promoted Harry Enton on this channel. I said, wow, an actual good pollster. I even reported on his polls that were bad about Trump. And I said, well, if Harry Enton says it, it's fair. And then he goes and says 100% support for Trump. I mean, it doesn't get better. That means literally nobody is against him. And I had literally just got done seeing about, Kim Jong in North Korea winning his election with 99.93% of the vote. I'm like, my God, it's crazy. So he's being fed bullshit polls, obviously. So he thinks that's more popular than it is. And then outright, when he started the war, he even said, I don't care. I don't care about the polls. If gas prices go up, they go up. I don't care. Israel's demanded this, and Israel gets what they want at our expense. Even if it crashes not only the entire country, but the entire world, we're willing to risk global recession for Israel's regional hegemony goals. That's literally the reality. We'd like to think differently, but it's not. That's the actual reality of it. What I wanted to discuss, though, is another possibility that I read about. I had to write down the name of it. It's not Karg Island seems to be the only island people know about. It's the mainstream island now everyone's discussing. But there are two other islands that are on people's radar. One is called Kesem Island. This is a much larger island, smack dab in the middle of the Strait of Hormuz, pretty much. It's like this U-shaped island. If you've ever seen a map of the Strait of Hormuz, it does kind of go like this. And then Kesem Island sits like this in the strait, and it's like it borders Iran. The problem with Kesem Island is it's even bigger than Karg Island, by substantially so. Would be harder to maintain control of. It's more in the middle of the Strait of Hormuz, which Iran is like hell bent on controlling. And on top of that, it has the same issues that Karg Island has. It's just too close to the Iranian mainland. So another island being discussed as a possible target is the island of Abu Musa, Abumoussa. This also sits smack dab in the middle of the Strait of Hormuz, but it's a very small island, and it's much further south than Kesem Island. It's actually in the middle of it's in the Strait of Hormuz, almost in the middle of the United Arab Emirates and Iran. And so controlling that island would be smart potentially from an anti-air standpoint. We put some systems on those islands to shoot down rockets that could potentially be fired at the United Arab Emirates. And Iran, more breaking news that I'll cover towards the end of the stream, the UAE is going to likely be Iran's next major target. They're already threatening it as of just a few minutes ago, once again, before I went live, probably just about 2 hours ago now. So that might be an island that they have their eyes on as well. There are several islands in the Strait of Hormuz, honestly. So it's hard to predict what we're going for here. And like I said, my other theory is we don't go for any of the islands because at the end of the day, they're all smack dab in the middle of a war zone now, pretty much. Too close to Iran, too easy to strike, too hard to control. So a mainland operation using our military force to literally steal the enriched uranium from Iran does seem to be more of the strategically sound option and more in line with at least the gaslit goals we were fed by this Trump administration when it comes to why we're doing what we're doing in Iran. This was supposed to be about nuclear warheads. It was supposed to have been solved last summer, then it wasn't. Now it's solved again, but it might not be. And it's like, so at least this lines up with that, I guess. It's just hard to say for sure, though. One thing is for sure, though, and I wanted to cover this because this is just the example of what new MAGA is and how bad we're being gaslit here. Ben Shapiro certainly hopes that American soldiers are going in. He's hoping for a ground war invasion. And I watched a little chunk of his show. It's hard nowadays. I used to naively eat his content up in like 2015 on Facebook because I was like, wow, this guy's smart and he's really good at debating. And he seems to actually care about me as a white guy. And now it's like fast forward just 11 years later, I'm like throwing up in my mouth watching him. And as I can't remember who pointed out in my chat, but as his now somehow thicker eyebrows are moving up and down in excitement while he talks about war. His whole thing is he's advising Americans now in his latest episode to prepare for a long, drawn out war. And this was his episode earlier. And then, like I said, just about an hour and a half ago, probably now, that Wall Street Journal breaking news article came out about the Pentagon weighing options to send 10,000 more soldiers to the Middle East, which does indicate some form of a large-scale ground war invasion type assault, and that would mean probably a somewhat long, drawn-out war. So Ben Shapiro, unsurprisingly, as a Jewish man of Jewish descent with some public speaking prominence as a political pundit, who no doubt has become one of the new faces of this new unrecognizable MAGA, probably has access to some information that people like us don't have access to, because that perfectly correlates with the breaking news article from an hour ago. And he says, well, first of all, he said, this was how Ben Shapiro started off his dialogue here when it came to this Iran war. The way he talked about it when it was first kicking off in February, he said, well, bombing Iran would not lead to a long drawn out war. This was him in like late February before we launched the strikes. Bombing Iran would not wouldn't lead to any long drawn out war. We just need to do it. They have a nuclear threat. That's a problem. Not just for Israel, but for America too, actually, for the rest of the world, really. I mean, bombing Iran it's necessary at this point. And it doesn't really matter whether or not Operation Midnight Hammer was a success. We have some intel now that suggests it might not have been. So we have to go back. And, we can also take out a lot of the regime from the sky as well. And that could be a net positive for the world. So he says that. Then we do, and it doesn't really work as intended. So then he says, well, now it has to progress a little bit. Yeah, we bombed them and it didn't fully work, but it's done a lot of damage. They're crippled now. It's a crippled regime. And so really what this war is going to turn into is just a quick bombing campaign. It's going to be just a quick bombing run campaign, a series of strikes over the next couple of weeks to thoroughly make sure we eliminate all of the threats in Iran. That's all it'll be, though. That's all it's going to be. Now, all of a sudden, that's not working. Now, all of a sudden, the commonly accepted military wisdom centered around regime change, which essentially states you cannot affect regime change from the sky and the sea alone. Now that we've seen that not work, even though we did take out a lot of their regime, they just got replaced. They're still active. They're still striking Israel every single night for the most part, with no intentions of stopping. Now that we've seen the utter failure of those just bombing run campaigns, now Ben Shapiro says there's no way to extricate ourselves from the situation now. We have to be locked in now, is what he says. And he goes on to say, in truth, Americans only got tired of the Vietnam War when around 50,000 soldiers died. So that tells you what Ben Shapiro's acceptable loss of life is in this war. Probably somewhere around 50,000 soldiers. That's acceptable to Ben Shapiro. It'll take about that before Ben Shapiro decides maybe, okay, this war might be just a little too much, actually. Even for the sake of Israel, 50,000 American U.S. lives lost is pretty bad. So that's what he said. He literally, I kid you not, this is a quote from him. Americans only got tired of Vietnam when 50,000 soldiers died, right? And this is what I was talking about when it comes to Carg Island. We have nut jobs like Senator Lindsey Graham literally dancing. He's like dancing up and down for joy about the idea of storming Carg Island, comparing it to a possible Iwo Jima Part 2, right? Like, this is just the level of sickness when it comes to some of these people, these warmongers. And so the bottom line is 50,000 soldiers apparently is the threshold for Ben Shapiro, maybe even more than that, who knows. I love how he refers to it as our military too, and it's like, is that your military, Ben? What are you a national of? But worse yet, he then says, even better, our military men. This is their commonly accepted viewpoint on this, because Mark Levin, Lindsey Graham, Mike Huckabee, all these guys, they speak about this in this way all the time. And so he says, our military men are heroes because they're willing to sacrifice their lives for a greater cause, which of course that greater cause is Israel. And then he says, it's all going to be worth it for a future where the Strait of Hormuz will be free again. And that's what pisses me off actually the most, believe it or not. Not the ridiculous warmongering rhetoric. I expect that out of him as it is. But what pisses me off, honestly, is that he's not that stupid. He knows better. But he's hoping that the average listener is stupid enough to think, yeah, we got to get that Strait of Hormuz opened again. Hey, numbnuts, it was open before we struck Tehran. It was already open. It's only closed because of us. And Israel, mainly because of Israel. I'm more willing to blame Israel at this point. They led Trump into this Middle East war like a dog, and he obeyed. But it was already open. Now it's closed. Yes, we struck their city, including a school full of school children. We killed children. And then we accidentally, hopefully, both were hopefully accidents, we killed the emergency crews that responded 40 minutes later. We came back and struck it again. Faulty intel. We've taken out all of these targets. We've killed probably close to 1,500 of them now. Not all military personnel. It can never be that way in war. And so, yeah, they've locked down the Strait of Hormuz. This, first of all, should have been easily predicted. And for some reason, it almost seems like this administration didn't see this coming. But second of all, it's only locked down because we struck them. So he's on there saying, well, these soldiers need to sacrifice their lives for Israel, and it'll be worth it because then we'll live in a free world again where the Strait of Hormuz is open for all. Wonderful logic there, Mr. Ben Shapiro. Truly, truly thought-provoking. I've never analyzed or seen the war that way before until now. Thank you, Ben Shapiro. Wow. Wow, we could all learn something from him. You know, this is the same guy, by the way, Ben Shapiro. He's losing 1,400 subscribers on YouTube per week as an average now. And on top of that, his views have plummeted in just the last 2 years alone. He went from averaging oftentimes over 100 million monthly views on his YouTube channel in 2024 to now averaging under 30 million monthly views. Everything is falling apart for Ben Shapiro as everyone in America, the Goyim, are awake, and it's being reflected on channels like Ben Shapiro. Mark Levin is pretty much irrelevant. If it weren't for President Trump glazing Mark Levin all the time, nobody would even know who Mark Levin is anymore. He's a wannabe Rush Limbaugh who sounds like a rat and looks like one too. These people are only prominent because they're truthfully, sadly, the new MAGA. They are the new MAGA. The new MAGA is Ben Shapiro, Laura Loomer, Mark Levin, Lindsey Graham. I mean, you know, who else was it? Bill O'Reilly today? Bill O'Reilly he's talking to? That guy's... Boomers are stuck in the 1980s. Bill O'Reilly is stuck in the 1960s. Okay? It's actually sickening. Stop everything. Super chat coming in from Eddie for 99 cents. I really appreciate you, Eddie. Thank you so much, man. Thank you for your tariff. I appreciate that. It helps balance the chat deficit. Now, I'm going to move on in 1 second here to discussing Israel's response to this and actually Mossad's response. We got a response from Mossad recently, which confirms now what Ben Shapiro is saying to the U.S. Goy Americans, as well as backs up now the reporting that we're seeing about the Pentagon, courtesy of Wall Street Journal, considering sending in an additional 10,000 more soldiers. So I'll cover that in 1 second. But I know the chats are coming in. Eddie says, read my question. All right, dude, you got it. Let me take a look. You pay your tariff, I'll read your question. He says, Glenn, you... Is that your question? Glenn, you here? I don't know. I think Glenn fell asleep again. My moderator. Yeah, see, these chats are being hidden too. Sorry about that. It's tricky. I can't. I usually have a moderator that will show those chats because you didn't say. I don't think you said anything offensive in any of those, but they got hidden. So, housing market crash loading, says Underboss. It might be, man. I mean, honestly, the war is like. We have multiple bubbles in our economy right now, and people do not understand this, right? Trump loves the stock market. Republicans are really good with the stock market oftentimes. So the stock market, although it's doing poorly obviously now because of the war, overall the stock market has undeniably been doing very well under Trump. I've invested when I've had extra cash. I made a good chunk of money off of NVIDIA, actually. I bought NVIDIA on the April 8th tariff announcement dip. It was an easy read. I knew right away $96 a share for NVIDIA was cheap. And I said, I'm buying in. I have a video on here where I said I was, and the chats were filled with fucking idiotic liberals. I don't think just because I'm anti-MAGA doesn't mean I'm pro-liberal. I am still a conservative. So if you're watching this thinking that I'm one of you and you're a liberal, I am not. I'm too smart for that. And I had liberals in my comment section. They're like, you're going to lose so much money. What an idiot. You bought NVIDIA? Don't you understand? The tariffs are going to ruin everything. We're going to be in a Great Depression by the summer, and you're going to be broke, buddy. Well, guess what? I wound up selling NVIDIA stock for double what I bought it for. And then I went back to that guy, and I commented, and I said, I told you. And then I went back a week later because he didn't respond, and it turns out he deleted his comments. So the stock market's been doing well under Trump overall, undeniably so, but it's in a bubble. There's no way around it. And the reason why it's in a bubble is because most of our economy is in a bubble. We resumed what's called quantitative easing. We resumed that in December after only putting it on pause for about 2 or 3 months. That's all we could last. And quantitative easing, by the way, just means money printing. And now they're not even calling it quantitative easing, and they're insisting they're not calling that anymore because what they're doing is different. But don't be fooled by that. They're printing money at an excessive rate once again. Well, that creates a bubble as well. So there's a bubble there. There's a bubble in the stock market. There's a bubble in the housing market. What does war do? Well, war is like a broadhead arrow. It's basically you're firing it towards bubbles. It can pop multiple bubbles at once. And the cracks are showing. The oil markets are a bubble too. And even worse for us because it's our petrodollar at stake. So there is so much in jeopardy right now that the average American just does not understand. So the average American, like a chud, just comes on here and goes, well, I trust the plan. And, nobody, and I say I'm proud to be an American and I'm proud of our military. So I say it. I do say it. I say nobody can stand up to our military, not outright. But the problem is that's not what's actually the problem here. I'm not worried about not being able to win a war in Iran, though I think all Middle East wars are endless by default. We could go in, we could crush Iran even more. Certainly. We already have crushed them, without a doubt. We just can't win. We can't get the result we want there because it is a cursed region biblically. And it's promised to not have peace till the end times. And if you don't believe in the Bible, fine. Just look back on history to understand that at least what the Bible has said thus far has been accurate. It's a cursed region. It's just full of war. It's like quicksand. You go in and you think you're going to be able to step out anytime you want, but by the time you go to step out, you've already sunk too far. Now you have to be pulled out. And when you're pulled out, it gets violent, it gets costly, mistakes happen, and it's a disaster. By the time Biden pulled us out, it was an embarrassment. We left behind equipment, soldiers' lives died, and it's like, well, that's Biden's fault. Yes, he was an absolute shit president, but who else's fault is it? Well, it's Trump's term one fault. It's Obama's fault. It's Bush's fault. It's just a culmination of issues. It's neoconservatism. So, yeah. I don't know where else I was going with that, really. But honestly, the bubble, that's right. The housing market. Yeah. And that's what war does. It begins to show, it starts to form the formation of cracks in everything, or the popping of bubbles. So, now I will say, as a business owner, some of those markets crashing would actually be beneficial to me, in all honesty. I'm not going to lie. But it wouldn't be great for America, is the problem. And I want what's best for America no matter what. I'm a recent convert to Jesus. Can I ask some questions? Says Max Ginsburg. Maybe. I mean, I believe in Christ. He is Lord. He is my Savior. I'm a born-again Christian. I am a Reformed Presbyterian by denomination. But honestly, this is a political channel. I'm not here to go into hermeneutics or any sort of crazy theology. I've been thinking about creating a separate second channel, but I want to make sure this channel is doing very well before I take on any side projects. So the fact of the matter is, if that's a bait question, and then you're going to be like, why does 1 Samuel in the Old Testament have God saying to slaughter all of the Amalekites, including the children and the animals? I mean, I want to believe in Christ, but I don't know if I can believe in him if that's in the Bible. I'm just going to ignore that. You can do your own research. I don't like to fall for the atheist traps. If you have genuine questions about Jesus, and I can tell that you're actually serious, then I'll consider answering them quickly. But this is a political channel at the end of the day. I'm not here to talk too much. Religion forms my views. I believe the church should protect society's morality and ethics. And I openly talk about Christ on here, but I'm not here to talk about all of that all the time. Nunya B says, I'm waiting on an argument as to how this is an official war. Okay. I mean, what do you want? What do you want, Nunya B? Are you basically saying we should all just eat up the slop about how this is an excursion? It's certainly not part of the forever wars, right? If you get in and out and then go back a year later, well, that wasn't a war because you got in and out, right? So if that happens, no matter how long that happens, which by the way, it's been happening for, since when? 1982? 1982 was really our first major instance. If you want to count 1953 CIA operations, but let's disregard the 1953 covert CIA operations in Iran. Let's discount that. That's the CIA. That's intelligence community stuff. Let's start with, what was it? Was it 1982 or 1984, right? And that was what? The Iran-Iraq war? Is that the first example? We got involved. Then Reagan had to get re-involved in 1988. Then we had to get re-involved for Operation Desert Storm. Then we had to get re-involved for Operation Desert Fox. Then we had to get re-involved after 9/11. Then we had to get involved even more in 2003 Iraq off faulty intelligence, which lasted for until what 2003 to what 2011, 2014, or was it 2014 where we got even more re-involved? And then 2001 to what 2021, a nice 20-year war. Now that's a war. I think we all agree on that. But everything else was what, an excursion? It's called Forever Wars, in case you didn't know. In case you're too low IQ to not be able to see the fucking pattern. Temporary bullshit. Desert Storm was just an operation, not a war. Okay, yeah, let's let that stay on its own then. Only problem is, it didn't. All throughout the 90s, we were involved in the Middle East. At what point do you just say it's a forever war? Which, by the way, Trump says it's been a forever war. What does he say? Well, truthfully, we've been at war with Iran for 47 years now. It's been imminent. It's been imminent. Your own president says it, pretty much. I don't know what else to tell you. What's your argument? Well, this is just a military operation. Okay, boots are about to be on the ground. Soldiers have died. People are dying. Things are blowing up. Sounds like war to me. I don't know what you want. We did this last summer, but it wasn't as bad. We only struck from the air. I don't know what you want anymore. I don't know. You guys are just so desperate to preserve the copium. I voted for Trump. I'm a social and fiscal conservative, but I'm not part of a cult. Believing in Trump and trusting in the plan is not policy. There's no Trump policy that I voted for that basically insists that I have to trust the plan, patriot. I can't be a panican. That's not policy. I don't owe that to any politician. If I don't like what they're doing, I get to, as an American, criticize them openly, speak about it openly, and give my own thoughts. And I'm certainly not going to fall for some sucker shit about how this is an excursion, which I like that he calls an excursion, because when you look up the definition of excursion, it essentially means going off the intended path, taking a break to go out of your way, which is exactly what we've done for Israel, and everyone knows it. The Iranians who defeated Saddam Hussein's army are the people in charge of the IRGC now. Those men are no joke. That's true for Traveling Lamp. They are a pretty well-trained military, and they do have a decent-sized military, 1.1 million strong. So that's the problem as well. They have the defensive advantage in Iran. They have the geographical and terrain advantage with their mountains. They're truly like one of the last standing empires of old for this reason, really. It's that country is just impossible to deal with when it comes to ground assault and invasion. So, and that is true. They're not a joke. And that actually further proves my point, by the way. The Iranians who defeated Saddam Hussein, well, wasn't that guy our enemy? It's like friends today, enemies tomorrow is what I say to warn us about trying to build up superpowers in the form of Israel. They may be our purchased ally now. They purchased our loyalty, but they're only our friend for convenience sake and power's sake, right? So I always say that all the time. It's not wise for us to turn Israel into a superpower, because when they obtain that, there's no real reason for them to maintain any sort of peace or any sort of trade relationship or alliance with us. It actually would be wiser for them at that point to ditch us and ally with China and Russia. So I always say that about Israel, but the fact of the matter is anywhere in the Middle East is like this. And this just follows the sad other historical pattern of America, and Europeans for that matter, in general, when it comes to white guilt and arming our future enemies. We did it with the indigenous savages here in the United States. We looked at them and we went, wow, we should give them horses and guns. And what did they do with that? Well, they waged war with us. They scalped our women and children and raped them. They tried to kill us. They tried to drive us back out of the lands that we settled for them. And we ultimately had to wipe them out for the most part and leave them on reservations. But we gave them better armaments to wage a more effective war against us. Pure stupidity. We do it in the Middle East all the time, too. That region is just death. Bold as a Lion says, Nunya B, you're a clown. He's just a copium guy, man. Like, Nunya B might just be one of those guys that's like 2 or 3 years behind us. So I'm not going to try and shred into the guy. Like, everyone in their own time, you know? Everyone in their own time. Everyone will be forced to these conclusions for the most part that I'm making now. That's how that goes. Stop everything. Did I see another super chat come in? I did, from Bold as a Lion, actually. He says, Eddie is cheap. Oh, man. Technically, too, because Eddie does the 99-cent ones, you've technically more than doubled him now. But thank you. Thank you for the tariff, Bold as a Lion. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. If every one of my subscribers just tariffed me, paid me a $2 tariff per month, my God, I'd be doing this full time. So thank you, Bold as a Lion. Seriously. You have to write a book first as Lifeguard. Yeah, I do have to write a book, Lifeguard. You know what I might start doing? X has this new feature where you can write full-blown articles. Twitter, formerly known as Twitter, X, Elon owns, has this articles feature. So I'm thinking about possibly taking the time to write some articles once in a while, which I could then actually just use as sort of the narrative on my live streams later that day anyway, you know? Host, do you believe in reparations? I believe in reparations from you, the chatters, to me. Because I spend the time to read some of the dumbest chats sometimes, and I feel like a lot of you owe me a lot of money for it. But not all of you. There's some good ones in here. Lifeguard, Bold as a Lion, Eddie. You guys are always the ones that, dial up even. You guys are always the ones that have to unfortunately cover the chat deficit. Is the host reading a teleprompter? No, I'm not reading a teleprompter. This is actually off rip. I have, here's what I do. I'll just show you so you guys know. I don't script anything. I just write down talking points that I want to address, basically. It's not like any sort of script where I'm like, you know, Ben Shapiro says, it's like not anything like that. It's like I just write down like brief things that I've observed throughout the day, and then I like craft it into a story. And I'm like, well, this is how this connects, and here's what's going on here. So it's like bullet points. No teleprompters. That's why I'm able to literally put this down and just talk off rip. So Epstein worked for Reagan and Iran-Contra in 1986 as a Mossad agent. I'll look into that, Christopher Peterson. Thank you for that. Actually, speaking of writing stuff down, I'm literally going to write that down because the Epstein file stuff I've been looking into, and Epstein worked for Reagan in 86. Yeah, I'll take a look into that, actually. I've always been checking out those Epstein files pretty much since they were released, and Jeffrey Epstein being a dual agent for Mossad and CIA seems to be like the most likely situation, honestly. So that doesn't surprise me. Stop everything! Bold as a Lion with a second $2 tariff. He's far too generous tonight, which I appreciate nonetheless. And he says, is this about the petrodollar or greater Israel, says Bold as a Lion. Honestly, it could be about both. If our petrodollar is diminished, and Israel achieves, well, the thing is though, greater Israel still, no matter how this turns out, greater Israel it's not like it's going to happen overnight or next week or this year. It still actually will be, in my opinion, a multi-process probably multi-decade. But yeah, I mean, the petrodollar diminishing and greater Israel occurring would be beneficial to everybody in the old world, or certainly to Israel. So it really truly could be about both. You have to wonder at some point when you look at what's happening and how our boomer politicians are such a sucker for Israel in general. You have to wonder basically, like, and I think there's a lot of merit to asking this question. Is Israel's secondary goal also to deliberately deplete our economy? Like, they obtain regional hegemony, they emerge as a new superpower in the world, and as a result of America helping them do so, which is already foolish, we also deplete our resources and knock ourselves out as the world's leading superpower. China perhaps takes our spot economically. Israel allies with China in the region and with Russia because it makes more sense for them to, based off of proximity when it comes to trade especially. You know, these are the questions that actually have to be thought about and asked. Hopefully they're the ones that most young people will be aware of so that there's enough time to reverse some of this. I'm going to move on, though, guys. I wanted to discuss actually speaking of Israel, the response. Now, to recap briefly so we don't lose our train of thought here after going off on those tangents in chat. Wall Street Journal is reporting on somewhat credible reports coming from what they say inside the Trump administration and Pentagon that 10,000 additional soldiers, in addition to the already close to 8,000 being sent there now, is an option being weighed by the Pentagon. So we could likely be seeing a force of up to 18,000 U.S. soldiers heading to the Middle East, specifically around the Persian Gulf and Iran, right? And that begs the question, what is the plan? What do we do with a force that size? Seems like a full-scale ground war invasion-style assault will be taking place, perhaps on an island in the Strait of Hormuz, though I have spent all stream now addressing why that would be foolish and dangerous and impossible for the long term, in my opinion, or mostly impossible, and certainly political poison. So then a mainland assault on Iran at their targeting their nuclear facilities, which we've been ensured have been destroyed twice now, to steal the enriched uranium from Iran also seems to be a very likely scenario as well. If Iran won't willingly give up their enriched uranium, we'll just go in and steal it from them. But the problem is this will take a lot of time. We will not be out of the war in the next 2 weeks like Trump originally promised us he would be, and certainly like Trump probably wants us to be, because the midterms are on the horizon, and that is our main form of constraint here when it comes to the Iraq war. Nevertheless, Ben Shapiro is saying, after gaslighting all of the American listeners, the goy who listen to him still at this point, he's hemorrhaging 1,400 subscribers a week and tens of millions of views per month he's losing, but goy Americans still listen to him. And so Ben Shapiro has gaslit his audience down the path of, well, it'll just be a quick strike. That's it. Then he led them just to take out the regime, etc. Then he led them down the path of, well, it needs to take a little while longer, but only a few weeks of bombing runs from the skies, nothing more. That'll be enough. Then it's, well, we're in this situation now, and there's no way out of it for the foreseeable future. And ultimately now Ben Shapiro is basically saying, well, this could go on for quite a while, but that's okay because Vietnam happened too, and Americans really only got sick of Vietnam when after the point of where 50,000 plus U.S. soldiers died. That's been the whole narrative here, right? And then he even says our military men are heroes because they're willing to sacrifice their lives for a greater cause, which is, of course, Israel. And then he says the goal here now is we got to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, which I said just a few minutes ago was already open before we struck Tehran and Iran. So this is just absolutely stupid logic and frustrating. Nevertheless, we now have another confirmation coming in, not just with the latest breaking news report from the Wall Street Journal about the Pentagon weighing the option of sending in 10,000 soldiers, not just from Ben Shapiro, who clearly has insider knowledge because he's one of the new faces of MAGA, the new MAGA that's unrecognizable, but now because of what Mossad, a statement from Mossad actually, Mossad's director actually, David Berea, and what he said actually in regards to the United States military, the goy Americans, and essentially their goal, which is Israel's goal is total Iranian obliteration when it comes to their military and specifically their regime. That's more of our secondary goal, I think. Our primary goal, based off of Operation Midnight Hammer last summer and what we tried to justify this war as right off the bat here again this year, is nuclear warheads, nuclear power, enrichment of uranium, etc. Well, Mossad director David Berea said that the Iranian regime change will now likely take at least 1 full year to achieve. And we have Benjamin Netanyahu, of course, also delivering speeches about how he doesn't really care what Trump's goals are or what we're deciding to do with this ceasefire with Iran. Israel will continue to strike Iran. And they have. They were striking each other viciously last night. Major damage done to both countries last night alone, let alone the past couple of weeks. And so with the Mossad director, David Berea, saying that the Iranian regime change will take at least 1 year, and with what we know when it comes to Israel being hell-bent on fulfilling their objectives, not to mention the fact that I've said this in the past, Israel made a massive gamble by dragging us into this war, right? This was already a massive gamble on their part, and I explained why in prior streams. To summarize quickly, I said they see the writing on the wall. We have these new stats coming in with the under 40-year-old voter demographic here in America. Israel is hemorrhaging popularity with the under 40 demographic. I fall in that demographic as a millennial on the youngest end of the spectrum. I'm only a few years removed from being one of the oldest Gen Zers out there, right? Gen Z, even more so, despises Israel more and more. Actually, now there's more support coming in for Palestine over Israel with some of the younger voters here in America. So Israel sees the writing on the wall. They know the bridge is already on fire when it comes to relations between the future U.S. voters, which is the under 40 demographic, and Israel. And so what that tells them is they probably won't be able to count on future support via military operations outright like this, or even funding. And as a result of that, they've decided that they need to go all in, which is what they're doing right now. This is like a massive all-in risk where they decide, we'll burn the bridge down entirely in exchange for one last major military operation to knock out Iran, which is the last true major counterbalance and threat to Israel in the Middle East. With Iran out of the way, it'll still be a somewhat slow process, but it'll be a more direct process for Israel to obtain regional hegemony and achieve the greater Israel region. That can happen now much quicker, as opposed to if Iran was still in action. And so all of that is to say, Israel must be assured that their goal will be achieved, and they'll do anything as a result to keep America involved, because they know without the might of America's military, Israel cannot achieve these goals on their own. Israel might be able to defend its own sovereignty and continue existing as the nation that it currently is. That's probably likely. But to knock out entire countries that are as large as Iran is very unlikely without the U.S. support. So they need us. And as a result, I could see them doing anything to keep us involved. I'll get to that in 1 second, but stop everything. My God, who is this? Christopher Peterson. I think you're a first-time viewer, and he's already paying his tariff. He's actually paying 2.5 times the amount at $5. And I really appreciate that. Thank you, man. And Christopher, I don't recognize your name. Maybe you've been here before, but I don't recognize your name. And he says, did you hear about the toddler girl the IDF tortured to get information from her father? Israel put nails through her hands and burned her. Yeah, I did hear about that. They burned her with cigarettes, too, I think is what they did. They used her to put out cigarettes. And I did hear about that. And that's disgusting, by the way. It's actually abhorrent. And that's like the kind of information that you only see reported if you pay attention to world news from overseas, right? So you don't hear about that much, but I did hear about that, and it was because her father was a high profile target of Israel for information, and he wouldn't spill the secrets, so they tortured his daughter, and they did. They put cigarettes out on the girl. Yeah. I didn't actually know about the nails part through her hands. That's even worse. But yep, I did hear about that. That is so sad. Thank you for the $5 though. That's a tough one. It's like, I'm grateful for the $5 tariff, but wow, yeah, that's a real downer. But yeah, that's a true, as far as I can tell, that's a true story. And I actually just read about that 2 days ago. I don't share that stuff on here typically, because I don't discuss the world news in that capacity. I discuss everything from an America First standpoint. But you know what? In all honesty, if that's the kind of stuff that's happening overseas, Americans should be made aware about that, because a lot of Christians here in America, especially, I've realized, especially the evangelical type, have been really deceived on the country of Israel, the nation of Israel. Lifeguard says, 2009 Lifeguard says, lifeguard is a tradesman and a physical condition you would envy. Oh, I didn't know all that, Lion. Wow. First time, just subscribe. Thanks, Christopher. Christopher Peterson. Thanks for the subscribe, man. I appreciate that. Be sure to like the stream if you haven't already as well. Double tap your phone screen or hit the thumbs up button. That truly helps the stream perform well in the algorithm. And make sure to, when you subscribe, make sure to click on a video or something so you can click that bell icon, because I've noticed with some of my subscribers, they're not getting notified when I go live, and that's because YouTube's changed everything now. Subscribers aren't by default notified all the time now. When people are subscribed to go live or post, you have to deliberately click all notifications now. So make sure to do that, because I'd love to have you back as a viewer constantly. Appreciate it too. Stop everything. Another tariff coming in for $1.99 from Lost River. I recognize you. You're back. I think this is your second time back now. What news outlets do you trust the most, says Lost River. Well, I'll tell you this. I'll give you a secret. I don't have any news outlets that I trust at all, actually. What I do is I try to spend a good chunk of my day, I'd say about 2 hours, usually before I go live, but sometimes split between an hour in the morning. Then I go work my regular job, and I own 2 businesses, so I'm busy. But because I own some businesses and stuff, I have time to consume a lot of news. I can listen to it at work and stuff. I work for myself, so nobody can tell me to not listen to music, or especially the news or whatever. So I listen to a lot of news throughout the day. I read a lot of news articles from all sources. Wall Street Journal I cited today. I don't trust them. I don't like them, but I read their articles. I read New York Post. I I read, I'll watch CNN, I'll watch Fox, I'll watch them all. And the bottom line is, what's most important is not necessarily your source, but what's important is to diversify your sources. Read a bunch of stuff if you have the time to, consume a bunch of stuff if you have the time to, and then try to think critically about it and analyze the information and compare it to the information you're getting from the administration itself, the Trump administration, and then compare it to what you're hearing overseas. So you have to pay attention to what, in this case, you have to pay attention to what the Iranian regime is saying, what Bibi Netanyahu is saying, what the Mossad director is saying, what Trump is saying, what Secretary of War Pete Hegseth says, etc. Marco Rubio. You have to really try to do some research on it, which is what makes this tricky and time consuming. And I think that's why my channel does okay, because a lot of times people don't have the time to do all that. So they want to find somebody who they feel like is analyzing it somewhat correctly. I've made accurate predictions now, like I predicted literally last night that Trump would extend his ceasefire deal. I literally said last night, Trump will play this the way he played the China tariff deal. And with the China tariff deal, he was constantly granting them extensions on no tariffs to work out a trade deal with China. He threatened 140% tariffs, and then a week later he'd say, you know what, the negotiations are going well, so we're pausing all tariffs on China, actually, or we're reducing it back down to 20% while we discuss a new trade deal with China. I predicted that last night. It came true today. That's because I think critically, I look for pattern recognition, I analyze, and then I go off of multiple sources to try to paint the right picture. And the bottom line is, and I say this too, we're in an even trickier situation now than we have been with some of my past reporting, because there's this element to all this called the fog of war. So now you can expect all countries to deliberately be lying. And in all honesty, rightfully so. It's down to national security now. So now it's even trickier, right? And I always preface by saying that, like, I could be so wrong. Half the time I'm hoping I'm wrong. I don't want boots on the ground. I just think it's imminent, right? And if I'm wrong about that, I'll be the first one to celebrate that live and say, I was wrong. Trump figured out this is not good. We're pulling out 18,000 soldiers from the Middle East. But that's not the case. It doesn't seem to be the case so far. But that's how I do it. Just to answer you outright, I don't really have too much of a trusted source. I'm not big enough to have direct sources. So that's actually really the issue. And so I just try to critically think about it, analyze it, compare it to actions. Don't be deceived by words. Politicians are like women. They'll tell you everything they know you want to hear, but you got to watch what they do. You got to watch their actions to see what they're really all about. So that's how I do it. Just to be upfront with you. Appreciate the tariff though, and the question. Thank you so much. Lifeguard says, exactly. I don't feel like paying as much attention as you do, so I need condensed versions. I appreciate that, Lifeguard, for reinforcing what I'm saying there. And that's exactly it. It's like, if you have the time, do that. But if you don't, find some good channels and try to track what they're saying and determine if they're at least, first and foremost, you got to be gracious with channels. There's channels that I still listen to that are somewhat MAGA cheerleader-ish, but I still think they're smart guys, and I'll still listen to them for their perspective. And I give them grace when it comes to, well, they're wrong, obviously. They still really want to support Trump. So I'll listen to them, and I'll roll my eyes and be like, this person is just so far off the path right now. But I'll listen to them anyway. I want to know where their head's at. I want to know what they're thinking. And I give them grace for being wrong because I feel like they're not being disingenuous. So find a channel first and foremost. Find a couple of channels if you want that seem sincere, seem like they want the best for America and for the administration, and seem like they want the best for our country and are reporting the news with sincerity and genuineness. Because a lot of channels will pump out information that I know right away. It's like, you're too smart. You don't believe what you're saying. And if that's the case, I don't watch them. I don't have time for disingenuous people. So find people who are genuine and reporting on this stuff. And then from there, give them grace if they're wrong sometimes. In my case, I advocate for this. Hope I'm wrong. When I say boots on the ground are imminent, please, by all means, hope that I'm wrong and celebrate when I am. I, honest to God, hope I'm wrong. I just have a feeling I'm going to be right. And I mean, all these actions, that's when you look at the actions. Look at the actions. 10,000 more soldiers now being reported to go to the Middle East. Does that sound like boots on the ground isn't happening? I predicted almost 3 weeks ago it would. As time goes on, I just feel more and more vindicated. So So anyways, yeah, so we have the Mossad director reporting on that, and that leads me to one of my other main points here, which is um, what we have now with this extension with the ceasefire peace deal, which I predicted accurately last night would happen. Now it is an extra 10 days, and like with the first 5-day ceasefire deal this week, the timing of this new 10-day ceasefire deal is also convenient because that later arriving shipment of an additional 2,500 Marines is expected to arrive in April, very likely at the end of the first week, beginning of the second week of April. And a 10-day ceasefire deal means, of course, we're going to now have a halfway ceasefire deal with Iran on their energy resources until around April 6th. So that buys us more time for additional Marine reinforcements. And the problem with all of this is Israel is not willing to honor that. And so we've seen this pattern play out with Israel in the past, mainly because outright their goal is not peace. And I just spent all that time explaining what their goal is. It's regional hegemony, which means they need Iran obliterated, which means they need total regime change. They need complete capitulation from Iran, and they need soft leadership that will constantly surrender and defer to Israel. They don't have that yet, very likely. And so they're not bound to be happy with any of this. And as a result, you can't really imagine that they're happy at the prospect of Trump now negotiating for peace, if he even is. Because that's the other thing, and I've said this. When Trump said China was negotiating with him back last year during the China tariff war, the Chinese officials were insistent that they weren't. For the longest time, they said, we're not negotiating. We don't know what he's talking about. It's psychological warfare. And so there's a good chance we're not even negotiating with Iran, and Trump's just trying to stir up doubt within the regime to make them feel like there might be defectors. There could be a whole host of things going on here. But let's grant the argument that he is. Israel won't be happy with that if he is. They don't want peace right now. They want domination and destruction. So they'll do anything, including ramping up attacks to stir the hornet's nest that is the Muslims in Iran. They'll ramp up the attacks to apply pressure on Iran to try to get Iran to continue waging war against them and us by default then. So we can expect probably even more attacks from Israel in the coming days and weeks. And ultimately, it's the pattern of disruption here is really the problem. So you got to keep your eyes on Israel. You got to keep your eyes on Bibi Netanyahu. And essentially what we're getting reports of right now when it comes to Israel is they have no intentions on stopping anytime soon. And they literally have said, Bibi said, well, Mr. Trump said they won't be striking the energy depots, but Israel will continue all of its strikes in all forms. So it's like, okay, there we go. That's the divulgence between Israel and America showing itself. A difference in goals, because everyone forgets this, but Israel is not an extension of the United States. They're a separate nationalist country with their own agenda. And that's going to be a problem. And it's only going to get worse because I just spent all that time a few minutes ago saying this was the largest gamble, in my opinion, on Israel's part. They're gambling everything. They know that this war is the final nail in the coffin with the under 40 demographic that has Middle East fatigue, Israel fatigue, and outright doesn't want to support them anymore. We're done now. That was my the war this year was my breaking point. You go back on my videos last year, I didn't talk about Israel that much. And when I did, I openly said I'm Israel neutral. I might be a little critical here, but I'm pretty neutral. I don't believe they're a big problem. I just thought, it is what it is. Like, their money's a little too influential for my liking, but I didn't see them as a massive problem last year. This war changed everything for me as a young 30-year-old millennial. It certainly is going to change everything for people my age and younger, and they know it. So this must succeed. And if it doesn't, it's a total failure for Israel. So expect anything, and that could include massive attacks. It could include false flag attacks. It could get scary. It could get scary, and at best, I think this war might get put on pause for the sake of the midterms, and also because Bibi Netanyahu's election is coming up this October as well. So if anything, it gets put on pause, and then for a short while, of course, all of us informed ones, all of us in the actual know, will have to deal with the annoying MAGA cheerleaders. Ha! You panicking? Did you see that? You were flipping out about this, and Trump ended it, and that's why it's not a war, because it only happened for 4 months. like Nunya B said in American Advocates chat, if it only lasts for 2 months, it's not a war. So it's over now, and you guys panicked for nothing, and Trump's done, and we dominated them, we crushed them. Iran will never be a threat again. And then they'll go do, and they'll walk down to their polls in the midterms, and they'll vote for all of the stupid neocon conservatives. And then January, February of next year, you'll turn on your TV and you'll see Trump, and you'll see Trump. January, you'll see Bibi Netanyahu flying out to the White House for the 14th time, and then February, you'll turn on the TV and you'll see Trump going, Iran is working once again towards enriching uranium. This is unacceptable. They're building more nuclear warheads. They're now a threat. We must go and take out. Iran cannot have a nuke. We will do anything, including total annihilation, to stop them. That will be February 2027. So that's the best case scenario, because it might have to get put on pause for political reasons. Rest assured, Israel doesn't want it to, but at some point, even they won't be able to control Trump enough to be able to, hopefully they won't be able to do this, to control Trump enough to convince him to keep fighting all year long. Because if that happens, my God, it's already going to be a blue wave in midterms. My God, it will be a blue tsunami if we're still at war in the Middle East during the midterms. Holy. It's already estimated that if this war ends in the next 2 weeks, it could take 4 to 6 months for the economy to fully reset. That already leads us up to midterm times, and that therefore means even with the short memory of Americans, they're going to be dissatisfied with the conservatives as it is. If we're still at war in the midterms, it's Jover. It's done. It's cooked. Republicans are cooked. Finally, I wanted to leave off with this. Iran has responded. And now, on one end, like I said, Trump's insisting that negotiations are happening, peace talks are occurring. It's going very well. Iran has sent us gifts, according to Trump. On the other hand, you have more breaking news that occurred about 2 hours ago before I went live here. And Iran gave an update on their hypothetical targets list should the U.S. decide to commit to a ground invasion on Karg Island or anywhere else in Iran for that matter. And what they're vowing to do essentially is they're including a lot of targets in now the United Arab Emirates, including the UAE's natural gas sources and production centers, nuclear facilities, solar facilities, and desalination plants. So Iran is still prepared. They're clearly anticipating a ground war invasion, and they're already back to making threats about what they'll do in response to that. And it is scorched earth, which is why Trump has to play more conservative than I think he thought he'd have to originally. I'll take a look at some chats here. I just have one question for you, bro. Are you a Trump? Are you a Trump or humper? What does that even mean? Up north of Cali. North of Cali, are you in Sacramento by chance? I've been out that way before. Ate some delicious In-N-Out burger. Had a good time. That was a long time ago now. No, you have to hear from UAE and Saudi. They are also affected by Islamic terrorist regime, and they want the fall of this tyrant regime. Yeah, that's their problem though, Zaz. That's not our problem. That's also been the theme of this channel if you're new here. Monroe Doctrine. Our foreign policy should be our Western Hemisphere. Venezuela, good. Iran, bad. We should never stick our nose in those affairs. My opinion, keep our military bases, keep our military presence active in the old world to flex our power and might, and use them if absolutely necessary. But in all honesty, just a show of force overall. We should stay out of these affairs. We should do in the Middle East what NATO has decided to do when it comes to all the European countries. For the most part, none of them want to get involved, and they're actually the ones that could have a potential problem with Iran. But they're the ones that are like, oh no, we're not getting involved with that. We don't believe in that war. Fuck you. Like, fuck Europe. That should be America being that smart, but it isn't. We're the ones that's willing to go halfway across the world to get involved in a senseless, stupid fucking war that's going to be expensive in both blood and treasure. It's absolutely pathetic. And you know what? The Middle Easterners can team up with Europe and Israel and Britain for that matter, and they can deal with Iran then if it's really that much of a problem, because they're the ones at risk, not America. It's just not how it is. In 2015, the president of Egypt said Islam needed to be reformed or the whole world was going to turn against it, says Bear. Well, yeah. I mean, that whole region's going to be turned against. Israel should pay for all the trouble they caused. Well, yeah, good luck with that. I'm a disabled veteran. I hate seeing our troops heading into harm's way, says Douglas. I'm not a disabled veteran, but I will say same. I hate seeing our troops going into harm's way, especially with no clear objective, which is the case for this. That's what's even more brutal about this. Imagine being a soldier and being told to go fight and possibly die in a foreign country, and then you're not even told why. It's like, well, maybe it's about regime change, but Persian liberation and nuclear warheads possibly, and we got to reopen the strait, which closed because we struck the country that borders it. Yeah, good luck. Just go anywhere and fight. You know, like, it's so pathetic. Demoralizing. Boulder's Lion says true, but a regime change won't happen unless a full ground invasion happens. That's true. Yeah, that's exactly right. We cannot affect regime change from the sky nor the seas. They will put a worse power and look to Iraq. Well, and that's how that always plays out, too. That's another historical pattern that's inconvenient for most people to recognize. Regime change in the Middle East is always a disaster because even if the right people get put in, they get overthrown by all the wrong people again. We can spend all the time in the world trying to set up a Western democracy and train soldiers there to defend it. The second we leave, they all surrender, then they're toppled, and they're conquered again by the jihadists. It's just how it works. Like, they're not our problem. We have so many problems domestically here in America. They're not our problem. Yes, we Iranians don't want the regime to remain, says Zaz. I feel for you, too. That's the thing. Like, I understand. It's not that you don't have my sympathy. It's just my sympathy doesn't make me feel strongly enough to say that we as Americans should spend our money and our soldiers' lives in your country. It's up to you guys to change your country. Buddy, you have the microphone, not me. Yeah, I know. That's true. GDP can cover in 2 years is the crazy part. We produce a lot, says Dial Up. We do. We need to ramp up our GDP, though. A lot is suffering right now. Inflation's going to be worse for this. There's a lot of bad shit happening here. My brother's a disabled vet, and somebody called a welfare check on him, and they tranked his dogs and surrounded his house with snipers. He was asleep through it all. That's crazy, Bear. That's absolutely nuts. 94719 something or other says exactly. Well, hey, welcome 9471. I'm glad you're agreeing. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and drop a like on the live stream. I'm going to sign off from here, guys. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thanks to all my super chatters, some first-time super chatters, some new viewers, some new subscribers. Appreciate all of you guys. Be sure to like the stream on your way out. If you haven't already, double tap your phone screen, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, turn on notifications if you haven't already. I'll be going live again tomorrow at around the same time, 8 p.m. Central. And in all honesty, don't take the black pill. Don't take the doomer pill. If I missed a chat of yours, guys, in the chat that you wanted me to see, this stream will save on my channel as a video. You can go post your chat that I missed as a comment. And if it's worth my time, don't post stupid shit. If it's worth my time, I'll respond to it. And, yeah, be sure to tune in live tomorrow again at around the same time. Glory to America. God bless the USA. And God bless all of you. Have a great rest of your evening.